Okay, hi everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We are here with Michael Scholes, my buddy, and we are going to talk about mugwort today. It's something that's not on a lot of people's radar when it comes to medical aromatherapy, but the ones that have been in classes with me, we use quite a bit of mugwort, and it's in some of the blends. And I thought we'd have a chat with Michael and talk about some of the medical aromatherapy applications, and then talk about some of the esoteric applications. So, Michael, how are you doing today?
Yeah, really happy to be here, Greg. It's always good to spend time with you.
It's super good to spend time with you.
Yeah.
It's like one of the things I said last time is, there's not a time that we have a conversation where I walk away like, I did not know that. Like, you're just full of information. So I love having these conversations with you.
Well, thank you.
With that, I want to start with one of the things that we were talking about a while back when we were talking about mugwort was you made the comment like, mugwort, the plant is like kind of crazy, or Artemisia is kind of crazy. And so I was going to just lead in with that and let you talk for a little bit, and then I'll follow up.
Well, thank you. And it's true, it's Artemisia. There's 200 different kinds of Artemisias. When we start looking at the world that we live in and seeing like 700 varieties of eucalyptus trees and 50, 60 different varieties of thyme, you start to really see the nuances between these oils, because into the smell, probably all Artemisias smell somewhat similar, but because of their specific growing areas and the species themselves, they all have something a little different. And since the aromatic world's become homogenized, thyme is only thyme, lavender's only lavender, geranium's only geranium, and then what you do, you miss out on this variety of oils that may be specifically good for your condition. And when I was training or learning and teaching back in the late 80s, my good friend Marcel Lavarde, who a Frenchman who'd been one of the pioneers, one of the 2 or 3 pioneers in the aromatic world. He showed a picture of mugwort, and he said it's just growing. It's like it's growing out of control. It's like it's crazy. There's no conformity to it. It takes over. And I thought when he meant crazy, meaning it's not good for making you crazy. It could be if you've used too much of it, but it has a way of working with the crazy parts of us.
Right.
And the chemistry is crazy. I mean, the chemistry of this particular oil it's got a lot of neurotoxic components to it.
Right.
And of course, in some days back in the day, things like pennyroyal and mugwort, you wouldn't even find them on the prices. I mean, I remember seeing some company talking about that they don't sell mugwort and pennyroyal because pennyroyal's an abortive fashions and mugwort is a neurotoxic, and therefore they made this statement that they weren't going to sell them. But they had no problem selling 100 different other oils that have the same situation depending on the dosage. So
right.
With mugwort, if you want to use it for the physical body, use a lot of quantity, not a lot of quantity, but larger concentrations. And if you want to use it for the psychological, you use down to like 0.25%, which is like a quarter of 1%. And with the norm being 1% in a massage oil, then you're going really cutting back. Right. And then you can use it and get those nuances, those notes that in mugwort that smell crazy become less so when you do less concentration. You can start to feel and pick up the individual chemical constituents that are really beneficial. So first of all, the aromatic profile of mugwort: powerful, fresh, cool, bittersweet, camphoraceous, with soft green undertones and a pleasant, sweet, herbaceous, and tea-like dry down. Traditionally, China has always used mugwort for therapeutic, and you know that because they use mugwort in they burn mugwort in acupuncture.
Right, the moxibustion.
The moxibustion. Yep. I don't know which mugwort that is, but it's an Artemisia.
Right.
And then, of course, in England and Europe, basically, mugwort was for witchcraft,
right,
magic, because it had an effect on the mind.
Right.
But today, you see, people don't look at the mind the same way. This is not witchcraft. That was only because of ignorance.
Right.
It had an effect on you, and maybe you felt you were possessed, or if you were possessed, maybe it would help you. Today, we're not possessed in the same way. We're all crazy, and therefore, but not we're conformists. You know, we live lives which are completely normal and abnormal at the same time. But there's a craziness of all those, and it always is when the mind becomes OCD, has PTSD, has all kinds of neurological challenges and shock and grief and all these things, then mugwort will be very, very beneficial. Believe it or not, mugwort is named from Artemis, the Greek goddess of the moon. It's also called the maidenwort or motherwort or the wombwort. And the wombwort ties into the gynecology because it's a gynecological regulator. Right. And that's the reason why Artemis, like pennyroyal, does something similar. It's an abortifacient, except the downside when women took pennyroyal or used mugwort in the past, you're not going to just it's not going to create an abortion unless you consume masses of it. And then what normally happens is the mother dies, the baby lives. Because it just is it's not something. Babies don't want to come out, and they're protected. They have a membrane around to stop things involved. So maybe it was a last ditch effort, but most of the time the woman died drinking it. Steam distilled from the leaves, the buds, and the flowering tops. Two main species that I'm aware of in regards to mugwort is the Herba alba, and also you'll know it for the other one. The species is the vulgaris.
Vulgaris, yeah.
And I'm not sure if they're the same or they're slightly different. They're probably slightly different species.
Right.
They typically grow, the one that is the Herba alba is typically now coming from Morocco. Also, and I've seen vulgaris come from Nepal. Right. And I feel that there's a similarity, but like anything, Greg, there's a slight difference in the smell, slight difference in the effect. If it's coming from Nepal, we already know that it's tied into spirituality. Right. Because that part of the world, all those prayers going on all the time. And of course, Nepal is, it's not without conflict in that part of the world too. So there's always conflict in finding spirituality. So I don't always see it as a bad thing. Right. It's also known as amwas. It's also known as herba blanche, which is another word. Basically, the herba alba is the white alba, and it literally means that the buds are white. White herb means in Latin. White herb. And white, of course, is the oil of purification. The color, white, purity, motherhood. This is why it's the mother herb, and different than the mother herb as in the German chamomile, which is also the mother, and also the pennyroyal, also the mother. It affects the gynecology to that degree. It's also the flowers are white and woolly, and I thought it was interesting because the white and woolly means it's soft. There's a softness to it, and I think that's related to the feminine. Very incredibly good for the nervous system and stress. Yeah, stress related. That's the side on the chemistry. So, for instance, in the chemistry, we've got a lot of ketones, massive amounts, like 77% of ketones. Ketones typically in essential oils means that it's good for the skin. It's a good mucolytic. It has the potential for crossing the blood-brain barrier and causing epilepsy. Not causing, triggering it. You don't cause those things. Those things are already inside. And I've never yet, by the way, in 34 years, have ever come across anybody who had an epileptic fit from an essential oil. If anything, if you did the dosage correctly, you could actually calm somebody down to a point where they don't have to build up to that level where they go crazy. My grandfather apparently had epilepsy. And for someone to have an epileptic effect, they have to be so stressed out. Yeah. There's so much inner stress. And this particular oil has the most incredible, because it's also got some esters, only 5% of esters. Esters you'll find in things like clary sage and lavender. Sesquiterpenols, sesquiterpenes, which are also very calming. So for the nervous system, in small concentrations, the best. It's also a tonic to the nervous system.
Right.
It's good for the nerves, good for nervous afflictions, disorders, strengthening the nerves, anything to do with the nervous system. Probably better than lavender, probably better than clary sage. Why? Because it has the configuration of the chemistry is geared towards people who have a tendency to feel crazy.
Right.
You say, I feel crazy right now. People say that all the time, but I don't think they really know. But there may be I listen to people. If somebody said, I feel crazy, it means that they've gone beyond just taking an aromatic bath. They literally feel like they're going crazy. Right. And craziness is when you can't contain all the things you have to do and all the trauma you've had and all the PTSD that most of us carry with us. It's good for shock also. Stops you from reacting to shock. And so there'd be great oil to use, almost like a smelling salts for people who've had shock and then they're completely out of their body. You know, in shamanism, the shamans always say that we're fragmented. We have shockful situations happen to us and then we just explode and fragment. And then what happens is it gets frozen in our energy field. And the idea of a shaman, like seeing a shaman and getting in contact with these fragments is to pull them all back in, like shards of glass coming back into your soul. And this is why this oil is good for that. It kind of brings you right back in to the center and gets you out of, because by the way, if you have PTSD to so bad, it's with you every day of your life, in every moment of your life. You just find a way to manage it. In terms of the physical benefits, good for the uterine system. So it's good for the hormones, and it actually good for balancing hormones, producing hormones. It's a balancer. So if your hormones are low or your hormones are high, they'll find a way to calm them down. And also, it's good for the digestive system, believe it or not. And
I did have a period of time where I was treating conditions, digestive issues, where nothing else was working, and I was like, what do I do? And I just had them start applying mugwort to their digestive tract in like a lotion, and it was bringing some relief.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be, if you put it in a serum or lotion and apply it. This is where topical, I don't think people realize you can't take this oil internally.
Right.
Or if you did, it would have to be like a homeopathic dosage, but you can get the same benefits. But the intestine, this is like for tapeworms and all kinds of abnormalities that go beyond your normal digestive system problems. Besides the nervous system, this oil is good for focus, concentration, and memory.
Right.
It's a really great oil to use, because what is memory? Memory, you have access to memory when you feel that your mind is calm. Our minds are complex, but you've got craziness going on from all these conditions that affect us. Then, of course, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get pre-dementia, and you're going to start forgetting things.
Right.
This all keeps you in that place where you keeps your mind ultimately focused. So that's very beneficial. Very toxic, neurotoxic. So you be careful with the quantity. It's anti-epileptic.
Right.
And that anti-hysteric.
Yeah.
We use the word epileptic. By the way, that science has proven that. It's not me saying that. Like, it's not folklore. When you mention the word epilepsy and hysteria, you're talking about two very extreme, crazy conditions that some people in the past would have been put into a psychiatric unit.
Right, exactly.
The crazy,
or they would have been seen as possessed.
Possessed, of course, and we know that people are not typically possessed. My grandmother used to sit and talk to spirits in the room. I mean, like, I used to watch her, and I wouldn't say she was crazy, but she was out of balance. She wasn't really talking to anybody. Maybe this is just her way of processing. She was also an intuitive, by the way. It makes it worse if you're an intuitive. It makes it worse if you're a sensitive person who is working with subtle energies, because you feel like you're on the edge between craziness and normality.
Right.
And I feel a bit like that. I feel that the world is crazy, and I'm already crazy in another way, but I don't like to look at myself as crazy, but more in harmony with all the things that are subtle. Also, it's very warming to the body. So it brings warmth to the body. And what is, that means it overcomes fear, because coldness is related to fear, poor circulation. And it's a diuretic, good for moving fluid.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really? Diuretic?
It's a diuretic also. So it's not only gynecological, it's all, so for the diuretic, for chronic renal failure. Now, listen to the words: chronic renal failure, not normal. Epileptic, not normal. Hysteric, not normal. Right. This oil is good for all those people who have conditions that, in, as you said, in times gone by, they would be looked at as crazy people. And you see right. Sometimes the homeless, you know, they walk in the streets and they're talking to themselves and they're having conversations. I've seen many people like that. These are people who are outside the realm of normal. Doesn't mean they're unhealthy, but they're in another world. They literally are talking to things that they see. So anything extreme, this all is good for. Why? Because in craziness, you've got extreme crazy and extreme calm. Mm-hmm. This all calms down extremely. Now, would this affect the average person? Calm the average person? Not necessarily. Better that you're in the place where you're in the two extremes of your life, where you feel completely crazy, and therefore you need crazy calming. That's right. How I would look at this all. Otherwise you're not. It pulls in the. It's for duality. It's for the polar opposite.
Right.
For most people, it's better to use the camomiles and clary sage and marjoram and lavender for calming, ylang-ylang perhaps. But for the times when you feel that you're off the reservation, you're completely in extremes, then this all will be really good to bring that back down.
That feeds into a lot of the things that we use it for in practical applications. I use it a lot for OCD. I use it a lot in PTSD. We have a PTSD protocol, starting with tarragon, which is in the Artemisia family, and then ending with a blend that is using several types of Artemisia with other things like clary sage and things like that I made specifically for PTSD. And the Artemisia, even if it's just used by itself or that blend, which is probably half Artemisia, you know, we've had people use it, like therapists use it with people coming back from Afghanistan or Iraq, and they're finding relief just by using the one oil, not even doing the whole protocol. And
yeah, I think the oil in itself, it does. You could mix it with other oils to make it more in a range for more people. But
yeah, that's what I
in its individual state, it's already great.
Yeah.
Also, it's good for it actually opens the root chakra,
right? And
at the same time, the crown chakra, the root chakra and the crown being connected. Also very good for it's been used from shamans to promote dream states. It's always been looked at as being sacred. Mm-hmm. It promotes tranquility. And, you know, that's to be also, you know, we're talking about, I wrote something. Let me see if I can look it on my, what I was writing just before I got on the line with you. You know, we're talking about different artemisias. So you also know of an oil called Artemisia annua. You will know that, right? So that means that it's an annual mugwort. It comes up once a year.
Right.
And just to let you know what I've been researching on that oil, which is a different Artemisia than the one that we're talking about, but it's still Artemisia. I heard the following. It has an extraordinary components which relates to antimicrobial benefits, the annual.
Yeah, I would agree.
And once again, an extraordinary component to do with the central nervous system. And when we talk about the central nervous system, we're talking about depressing we always like antidepressants. For depressing the nervous system, the annua is another oil that literally sedates the nervous system from extremes.
Right.
And therefore, the two have similarities, but that's not to say that you would choose one or the other, because people are always saying to me, what would you rather have? Should I buy the lavender or the clary sage? And what? Get both. Because, and then if you start mixing the artemisias together, and then maybe use the cameos too, family, which are also to do with the feminine and also very calming. You might actually find some specific blends that would be beneficial for people whose nervous system, which is everybody.
Yeah.
If you took my nervous system and put it into my grandfather, he'd be dead within the hour. He never lived at the pace or in the complexities of where we are.
Right.
Therefore, we think that our nervous system is within normal, when in fact, we know that the nervous system being triggered the way it is, it's just a matter of time that you're going to get something where your immune system's compromised because of that.
Right.
Or you'll lose your mind. I mean, you see people, either you got cancer and immune problems, or you can't remember things, you got Alzheimer's, you got Parkinson's, and you basically your mind is gone, but your body's left behind. So I think this idea, Greg, of using the artemisias for extreme shock, for epilepsy, for anything to do with extreme mental brain abnormalities that are triggered from trauma. This is the family. And every single person I know who talks about the artemisias either don't talk about it or they just think that it's poison.
Yeah.
Not a poison. It's only a poison based on its dilution. And you know as well as I do, you start talking about homeopathic dilutions, you could use a 0.1% of a dilution for somebody, and it would be very beneficial depending on where they are in their own mental health.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the same things. I mean, you pretty much covered practically everything that I would say. I could say some things in different terminologies, but I mean, you are still hitting every point. Like, the shamans talk about, soul retrieval and having fractured pieces of ourselves. And then the idea of shock, in psychological terms, we'd call that dissociation. And there's different levels or degrees of dissociation, and the most extreme being a multiple personality. And so, not that we have multiple personalities, but we do start to fragment somewhat. And so one of the things that we've used the mugwort for is in energetic medicine, we would look at anytime there's dissociation, there is poor energy movement and poor circulation in the limbs, the arms and the legs. And the arms and legs are extensions of the basic chakra, like you were talking about. And so if you look at Chinese medicine, even in Chinese medicine, when they treat things like dissociation, they actually also treat the arms and the legs. And so one of the things that we go through and do, and it's something that comes from Chinese medicine, is apply a little tiny bit of mugwort to each of the joints of the arms and the legs, like in the crease. And one of the things that mugwort and artemisias are really good for, but especially mugwort, is opening up the channels for energy to flow through the meridians. And so that's why they use it in, it's warming because they burn it in acupuncture, but they're using it to open up the channel.
Nice.
And so when you start opening up the channels of the arms and the legs, it starts addressing the dissociation, which, in an acute situation would be shock. And in an extreme situation, it starts to turn into, a mental issue where you start kind of checking out of those segments. And so it's really good for helping a person be present with these different pieces that are disconnected or at odds with each other. And so Yeah, so I mean, I'm saying kind of the same thing that you said. I'm just using different words. Then on the same part, both the mugwort and the Artemisia annua, especially the Artemisia annua, we would use the same pattern to reset what we'd call like a hypervigilant immune system. And so basically autoimmune issues are just the immune system has become super hyper vigilant and has turned on the body. I mean, to make it simplified. And so by going through and doing, you do the arms and the legs, and then you do the navel, and you do 1.5 inches below the navel just to hit these energy centers, because the effect that the navel has on the spleen and some of the other areas, it really helps to reboot and reset the immune system. And one thing that I noticed about 3 or 4 years ago with the Artemisia annua was that when we would use it in situations where there was a lot of viral activity, somebody just had a virus that was out of control, or they had something like a chronic viral infection that is just something that's always in the body. We started using the Artemisia annua, and viruses are very interesting, because like when you go after the virus, part of the thing is the virus also has a certain level of intelligence. And so if you start to threaten the virus, it starts to do things to try to survive, be it that it manipulates things in the body, or it starts to change things, it basically adjusts and adapts, or it just steps up its drive for survival. It's stepping up its ability to thrive in its environment, which the environment is your body. And so one of the things that we were using the Artemisia annua was, when I would give somebody the Artemisia annua or mugwort, it would actually calm down the virus. It wasn't treating the virus like an antiviral would, but it kept the virus really calm and sedated, basically because of the effect that it has on the central nervous system. Then when the antivirals were given, the antivirals would work in a way that was just totally amazing. So, we have like several situations where people had the genital warts, where they were getting the vaccine to prevent, because it's a precursor sometimes to certain types of cancers and things. And so there's been a lot more awareness on treating these things. And over about a 6-month period of time, I'd have the person just do a dosage like 1 or 2 times a week. And we had several cases that when they went to their next checkup, they tested negative, and every time since they've tested negative. So they basically eradicated something that is considered, lifelong as far as a viral infection.
Which virus are you talking about?
The genital warts, the warts. Yeah, the HPV.
Yeah, HPV. Okay, genital.
Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Yeah. And so, I've used it on some of the other viral conditions, and we've actually started using it even sometimes in cancer cases, because if you look at what is cancer, it's chaotic cell growth. And building on, I didn't really think about it the way that you're talking about it, with just the craziness or the chaos and things being super polarized. Cancer is very much that. It is a chaotic cell growth in the body, and it's not a primary treatment, but if we can get the chaotic cell growth to calm down, then it can be a little bit more easy to treat, regardless of how they're treated. It could be, any number of ways of treating it, but still you want to keep the cancer, because the cancer does the same thing as the virus. You go after it and it starts to engage that kind of thriving in its environment. And again, the environment being the body. And so it has been one of those things that has been used to treat like something that's almost seems a bit untreatable. And then as far as the energetic component, going back to, the old pagan times where they would use it for like witchcraft and things. One of the things that we use it for sometimes is protection. And, it's just, it's a little bit like hyssop. Hyssop reduces the ability to absorb things from the environment. Mugwort doesn't necessarily do that, but it flushes out the stuff that people have projected at you. If somebody's sitting there grinding on you, there's a little bit of an energy that's being projected. or if you're just in a toxic environment and you walk out and you're like, ugh, I feel dirty on the inside. I don't just feel dirty. And so it's one of those ones that it has a cleansing effect, and it kind of strengthens the energy body because it opens up the meridians, and it does open up the energy centers, the chakras. So kind of wherever you put it, it opens it up, but it does that because of its super dynamic impact it has on the basic chakra. And so it really is an amazing oil. It helps to open up to that right side thinking, that intuitive mind, where you're starting to go into those dreamlike states, or you're tapping into the unconscious. The left side of your brain is always processing sensory information from your environment. That right side of your brain starts to go into that unconscious intelligence that is beyond your senses, things that but you're not tapping into because you're, a lot of times in fight, flight, or you're, like you said, you're fragmented. And so, and I found it very interesting too. I stumbled across this quite a while ago, but you brought it up as a sacred herb. Apparently, John the Baptist used to wear it. He would wear a girdle of it around his waist.
Wow.
Yeah. So, he's a heavy hitter. So if he found value in it.
I think you covered everything there, because I feel like, it's one of those, let's just talk about the fact, all the things we talked about is from the plant, from the herb.
Right.
When you start distilling it, all you've done is concentrate the herb by 100 times.
Right.
Which means it's going to be 100% more potent, and therefore you have to always adjust the dosage. And of course, we have to also remember too that there's wormwood, which is also another artifact.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes mugwort is referred to as wormwood, but it really is a cataloging of the exact species.
Right.
Of the 200 artemisias, not everyone is distilled, and I'm sure that somebody might think it's mugwort, when somebody might think it's wormwood, and they all have a slightly different effect. And of course, to make a combination of all of them would be beneficial, because it would take the range of application beyond what we've talked about and cover a whole gamut, which is the beauty, right. The beauty of blending. And then of course, throw some lavender in there maybe, or something to kind of make it as a delivery system. They can anchor onto the lavender or anchor onto something else that makes it now more appealing, where it smells better, but it still has the effect underneath. So that's right. The beauty of making blends.
Right. Well, beautiful. Thank you again for illuminating another subject of my favorite subject, which is essential oils. And it's always great talking with you. I always learn something every time we speak. So
good talking to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Michael.
See you next
time. Talk to you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.